Inside of the Frontier, there's only a single engine choice that's available, and it's the 3.8 liter V6. Naturally aspirated, but it pushes out 310 horsepower and 281 pound-feet of torque. Here's the thing, the truck doesn't have the option for a sport mode, but it does have a manual mode. So you're just gonna be in drive, hit the shifter over to the side, and let's get back up to highway speed, and we'll go in 3, 2, and... Damn! 100. That was actually surprisingly impressive. The benefit, naturally aspirated, you don't have to wait for a turbocharger to spool up, but that was surprisingly good. And the truck that this would really compete against would be the Ford Ranger. The 2.3 liter EcoBoost engine doesn't have as much horsepower, it has a bit more torque. You can easily top up your wiper fluid, there's easy access to the battery, and then changing oil as well. And then the warranty inside of the Nissan world is pretty industry standard. So the basic is going to be a 3-year, 36,000 mile, 60,000 kilometer, with the powertrain getting bumped up to a 5-year, 60,000 mile, 100,000 kilometer. But it's also based off of you taking care of your rides. You want to make sure to take it in for regularly scheduled maintenance, regular oil changes to get the best possible life out of this truck. I think the front end of the Frontier looks great. I like the way that the grille sits. The matte black finish looks solid. There's a lower part of the bumper that's painted silver, and then you're going to find some tow hooks in the front, along with a front bash plate. So if your plan is to take the truck off-road, you at least go in knowing that that front end is protected when you look at approach angles. So if you run over rocks and things like that, you are covered off. Technology-wise inside of the ride, you're not going to find the forward sensing system, but there is a front-facing camera as an option. So you will find a full surround view monitor inside of the truck, which is useful if you're going off-road. The lamps inside of the ride, for the most part, are going to be LEDs. But when you get into the entry-level trim, that's just an old-school halogen bulb instead. So LEDs are nice. The front profile looks great. And then you also do have fog lamps down below as well that are wrapped in that same matte black highlight. This Frontier is in the Afterburn orange, which hands down is one of my favorite color choices. There's just something about it being bright. It's just demanding attention. The only thing I think I would change out on this one would be tinting the windows out a little bit more. But outside of that, I think the color looks fantastic. Pricing for the Frontier in Canada starts at around $50,009 versus in the States it's around $33,500. So there's a pretty big price discrepancy there over and above exchange rates. And the price discrepancy is actually going to come down to the available drivetrain. Is in the States, it's available either 4x2 or 4x4, so rear-wheel drive versus four-wheel drive. Versus in Canada, that 4x4 system is the only option that we've got available. 4x2 is an absolute nightmare in wintertime, so having the 4x4 option, it absolutely would be the way to go if you're in Canada like me or northern states. There are a series of different wheel styles that are available. 17-inch across the board for the actual wheel size, and then the tire profiles are going to depend on the trim level of the ride that you're in. This is the Pro 4X, which means that you're looking at these beefy Dynapro AT2 tires. There is the option of getting beadlock capable wheels right from the factory. And the big benefit of those beadlock capable wheels is that if you're airing your tires down because you're going off-road, you don't have to worry about the tread of the tire slipping off the rim of the wheel. Which is pretty useful. Inside of the ride, you're also going to find the option for a lift kit right from the factory, along with Nismo suspension. There are a lot of configuration options available for the Frontier. So it's available as the crew cab with the 4 full doors. There's the king cab with the 2 full doors in the front, 2 half doors that swing the opposite way. There's a long wheelbase available too, so you're looking at either a 5 or a 6-foot bed. So there are a lot of configuration options inside of this truck. You'll find the option for running boards as well, but I mean, getting inside, first row is easy enough. Second row, a little bit on the tight side, but there are assist handles, which is useful. The side view mirrors in the Frontier are manual folding. There's also a camera mounted underneath. They're heated, and it's also got a blind spot monitoring system. So if somebody enters the blind spot on either side, it's going to highlight there to let you know. There's intelligent access too, so you can push there to either lock or unlock the doors. I'll get to that interior in a second, but this is going to be standard across the board. So you can adjust your side view mirrors, your door locks, and then you've got your window control. I like that pocket styling there that follows through, design-wise inside. You've got some door storage, and this one is the upgraded audio system. There's an available tow mode. You can increase or decrease the brightness of the cluster. There's also the option of muting out all of your notifications for your different safety systems. Turn on or off the bed power. There's a cargo lamp button, turn traction control off, and lock out that electronic locking rear differential. You've got a parking brake there to kick down, your hood release, and these are just the regular carpeted mats inside of the truck. Honestly, absolutely worth it to go for the thermoplastic rubber trays instead. This is going to be a nightmare in the winter time. You've got seats that are power adjustable, so forwards, backwards, up and down, adjust the backrest, multi-way lumbar support. There are a few different types of seating material available, with leather being in this luxury trim level of the ride. Taking a peek at the steering wheel as well as the cluster screen inside of the Nissan Frontier. This is going to be a walkthrough showing you everything that you need to know. First thing is that the steering wheel inside of the ride might be heated depending on the trim level that you're in. And you can toggle it on just above the shifter there. So there's a button with 2 individual levels. Steering wheel is also going to be manual telescoping. So just down by your left knee, there's a release. You can drop down in order to go in, out, up, and down to find that perfect position for you. Once you find it, you're going to click it in order to lock it back into place. And there are so many different buttons and so many things you need to know. So along the left-hand side, you've got your blinkers. You can also flip into a few different light modes. So the mode on the very top there, so the one I normally would recommend you stay in the majority of the time is going to be your auto mode. There's a downside of the auto mode though, and that's that you can't lock your high beams out. You can flash them out, but in order to permanently lock your high beams out, you have to go into your headlamp mode, so the very bottom. You're then going to push away in order to permanently lock your high beams out, pull towards you to turn them off. But regardless of the mode that you're in, you can always flash them out. It's just that in the auto mode, you can't permanently lock your high beams out. There's also the flexibility of using the switch along the top there in order to turn on your fog lamps. Stick along the right-hand side is going to be for your wipers. So up once in order to do a single wipe, and then down gives you some variable speeds. One level down will then give you the flexibility of using the other rocker in order to say how fast or slow that rain is hitting the windshield. You can pull towards you to get that front wiper fluid going as well. And then so many different buttons. So the one along the right-hand side here, these are going to be for adaptive cruise control or even technically regular cruise. One thing about the cruise control system though is that you can only use 2-wheel drive in order to be able to utilize it. So down by your right knee, there's a selector switch. So if you're in the 4x4 model, you'd have the flexibility of moving between 2-wheel drive, 4 high, or 4 low. Unfortunately, the cruise control system, both the regular and adaptive, only work in my experience so far with 2-wheel drive. But using the system is straightforward. So you toggle it on this way, and you can see there that there's now a message that's popped up. You could then set your speed by pushing down. You could then increase or decrease 1 kilometer, 1 mile per hour by pushing up and down this way, or push and hold up in order to jump up 5 kilometers or 5 miles per hour at a time. You could then cancel your speed. You could hit the brake to cancel your speed, and then you'd push up to resume your previously set speed. And then there's also a distance indicator. So there are 3 unique levels. So it's how close or far are you away from the vehicle that's in front of you. I want you to think of that almost like a 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi type of a rule for that distance. So it's essentially a gap adjustment. You've also got the flexibility of going into a regular cruise. So the default is going to be adaptive, but with the cruise control system off, if you push and hold the button instead, that's going to turn you into a traditional cruise control. So the difference is that the adaptive cruise is a set it and forget it cruise. So let's say if you set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway, car in front of you slows down, your truck will slow down. If they change lanes, if you change lanes, pick up speed, it's going to pick you back up to your previously set speed. It's got stop and go capability for a few seconds as well. But with the traditional cruise, like what we're looking at here instead, if you set it at 100 kilometers an hour on the highway and the car in front of you slows down, Yours will not brake. So you just have to make sure you're paying attention if you opt for the traditional cruise instead. But if you want a little video demonstration showing you how the cruise control system actually works, check down in the description of this video for a walkthrough. You've got a series of buttons along the left side of the steering wheel, so you can change between all of your sources. So whether it's AM, FM, SiriusXM, Bluetooth, etc., you can move between your sources here. You could then hit the enter button in the middle if you wanted to confirm choices. If you ever get messages in the cluster, you can push up that way. You can cycle between a series of other pages here. There's a volume rocker. There's a voice command prompt where you'd be able to do things like change stations. You can navigate using your voice, and there are so many other things that you can do. So one thing I'd actually recommend is that when you get your vehicle, jump through here and see the different options, because there are, like I said, a ton of different options and a lot of different things that you can do using your voice. But making phone calls, changing stations and things like that, just kind of scratching the surface. Then you can also answer or hang up on a phone call this way. And then moving into the steering wheel itself. So let's hop into the actual cluster screen. And there are so many things. So you've got your gauges, which I love. So you've got your traditional gauges. So your tachometer off to the left-hand side, speedometer off to the right, with your current engine temperature along the bottom side there. You've got whether or not that lane keeping system is turned on and other safety systems with your current fuel gauge. So your fuel gauge along the top there, along with on the bottom right-hand side. Speed sign recognition's there. There's the outside temperature, your off-road status, which gear you're in, whether it's park, reverse, neutral, drive, etc. In the off-road mode, so the page that we're in right now, you can also see what's going on. So as of right now, we're in 4x2. If you move the switch down by your right knee, that can switch you into 4x4 high, or moving in and pushing can transfer you into four-wheel drive low. So four-wheel drive low is where you're going to want to be. Ideally, if you're pulling a boat out of water, if you're heavy towing, things like that. But outside of that, you're going to want to be in either 2 high or 4 high the majority of the time. When you're in 4 low, you can also turn on your rear locking differential as well. And then switching out, you do have to be in neutral in order to be able to switch into 4 low, and then switching out of it. But once you're in 4 high, 4x4, 4x2, you can switch that out easily, and you can switch it out as you're driving as well if you'd like to. But it's straightforward using those switches. There's also a manual mode. So when you're in drive, if you move the shifter to the left, you could then use the shifter in order to move up and down and jump in between different gears. So there's a lot of benefits to doing that, but if you want to walk through on how it's done, it's on paddle shifters, but paddle shifters and the manual hand shifter, the principles, work the exact same. So you can find a walkthrough down in the description of this video. And then there are a series of pages, as I mentioned, by going left or right here. So you'll notice that I'm jumping in between screens by going this way, and then you can also move up and down here. So there are different auxiliary gauges that are available. So transmission temperature, battery, oil temp, things like that. Different options for driving, so you can see how far you've currently driven. If you wanted to reset, you're just going to push and hold the enter button there, and that's going to reset you, and that's going to reset it and bring you back to 0. You can move across to your current fuel economy, and that's going to be the average. It's not the greatest right now, just because I'm sitting here doing an explainer video. Your current audio source, so whether that's AM, FM, SiriusXM, etc. Again, hitting that source button to change between those sources. Moving across into a compass view, so you can see which direction you're facing. And then one cool thing is that if you've got an active route going, it's not full mapping cluster, but you do have the flexibility of getting into turn-by-turn directions. So it's, like I said, not full mapping cluster, which I would like to see, but you can at least see which direction you need to take that way instead, which is kind of nice. When you cancel the route out, it just brings you back into your compass view. Your sign, whether or not that one shows up, yay or nay. Moving across brings you into different driving aids. So you've got your blind spot system, so it lets you know if somebody's entered the blind spot on either side, and then also your lane keeping aid as well. So you can toggle all of these settings off if you want to. There's your tire pressure, and then the auto start stop button there as well, into a boatload of different settings. So let's navigate through the settings. So you've got your lane departure warning. So if you start to veer over into a lane, you'll notice that that changes color, and then you'll get a little bit of a steering wheel vibration, but you can turn that departure system off if you want to. So if that one drives you nuts. It's the same thing with all of these other systems, like the blind spot warning. Do you even want to get that one, yay or nay? Emergency braking. So if you're going to potentially be in a collision, do you want the vehicle to automatically brake for you? If you're going to back up and the vehicle recognizes a potential collision, it can brake for you that way as well. Your speed limit sign, you want that showing up. Driver attention warning, so if you start to veer over too many times without signaling, eventually it's going to tell you that you should probably take a break. And then there are different options for parking aids. Do you want those sensors on, yay or nay? And then what volume do you want them to be at? And then the range, so how far away from the obstacle before it starts beeping at you for the reverse park sensing system. Basic meter settings are available there too. So on the home screen, your home icon, so that initial one, what do you want showing up? I'm personally a bigger fan of having the off-road status, but you could have your speed show up if you want it digitally instead of the analog speed there instead. That one's going to come down to a matter of preference. There's an eco drive report when you turn the truck off, and then do you want to get a little welcome effect when you start up? Rear door alert, with that one turned on, if you have the second door opened up and you turn the vehicle off, it's going to let you know to check the back seat. So you can get an alert and a horn honk, or nothing. You can adjust some things for your lighting, so welcome lighting when you approach the vehicle. Light off delay when you go to lock the vehicle. Do the lamps just turn off, or do they stay on for up to 3 minutes instead? Your turn indicator, so do you want to have, there we go. So without pushing down, you get three indicators there instead. With locking, let's see, when do you want to automatically unlock the doors? Do you never want it to automatically unlock when you actually turn the truck off, or when you shift into park? With your wipers, do you want it to be speed dependent so they can go faster as you speed up? Different alerts. Do you want to get navigation alerts when you're coming up to upcoming turns? Maintenance information. So if you're doing work yourself and let's see, you're changing out your oil, air filter, things like that, you've got the flexibility of resetting all of this information yourself. Measurement units. So do you want to be in kilometers, liters per 100, miles per gallon, etc.? For your tire pressure, do you want to be in PSI, kPa, etc.? And then you've got your temperature. Do you want to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit? So you can see that changing up along the very top there, whether you go one way or the other. Language, do you want to be in either English, French, or Spanish? And then you can do a factory reset specifically on the cluster screen settings. Taking a peek at the infotainment system inside of the Nissan Frontier. The Frontier does technically have two different screens that are available. There's a smaller 8-inch screen, and then there's this larger screen that you're going to find in the majority of trim levels of the ride. The functionality is pretty much the exact same though. In this video, we're going to dive in. I'm going to show you everything that you need to know. So the first thing is that you've got your main screen here with a series of different sub-screens, and you've got the flexibility to customize the menu simply by hitting Customize Menu. So let's do not show again, and then you can just do a drag and drop for any of the available icons, and there are a ton of different options that are available. And you'd be able to customize each of these 3 pages. So you can kind of do a drag here and drop things into the trash if you wanted to get rid of them. But it's nice that you've got the flexibility to customize this and really make it your own, and it's very simple to do. You've got your clock, you've got your split screen flexibilities, and then different CarPlay options and things like that. And then along the bottom, you've got all of your basic icons too. So you've got your phone info, audio settings, and things like that. Menus along the top with your current time along the top there, which you can tap in order to be able to adjust out your current date and time. But we'll go through that one as we dive deeper into our settings menu. But there are so many different things you can do. And actually, why don't we do this? Let's start off on the phone side of things. So as of right now, there are no active devices connected to the vehicle. We're going to start off on the iPhone side of things. So all we're going to do is hit Add New, looking for Bluetooth on our phone there, and waiting for, there we go, Frontier to show up. PIN numbers match up, so we're going to pair. Do you want to allow contacts and favorites to sync up? This is not my car, so I'm definitely saying no to that one. Obviously, if it was yours, you could say yes, but we are now fully connected. And we're connected over Bluetooth, which means that we can make phone calls and listen to audio as well. And one nice thing is that the Frontier has Apple CarPlay capabilities, and it's wireless, but it's also backwards compatible. So if you wanted to use a USB cable, you could, whether that's a USB Type-C or a USB Type-A. You've got the flexibility for both. You just want to make sure that it's a USB cable with the data transfer icon there, because if it's not, there are 2 different types of cables. There's one that's data transfer and charging, and there's one that's strictly charging. So if your CarPlay isn't working over USB, the first step to try is this, but I've also put together a walkthrough video explaining how to fix some common CarPlay issues that you can find in the description. But on the phone here, it's asking, do you want to allow CarPlay with the Frontier? Yes, we want to do that. And a few seconds in, and let's connect. Look at this. Would you like to use CarPlay with this device? Yes, and it's connecting. Boom, look at this. Wireless Apple CarPlay, which is even better. So like I said, it is backwards compatible, but having this available as an option, I think is fantastic. You've got your current time, your connection level, battery level, which map was open last, which audio application was open last, which miscellaneous application was open last, and then you can go to an icon view into this little home screen view instead. And you can swipe across easily to get to these other options. Now, this home screen of CarPlay is kind of customizable. So this is always going to be whatever map application was open last. This one is going to be your general search box. You've also got your audio. And then if you had a calendar notification coming up today, you'd be able to see your notifications there. If there wasn't a calendar notification coming up that hasn't passed, this just wouldn't be here, and the search and the media would be stretched across the top instead. You've got the option for Apple Maps, Google Maps, and Waze, and they're all really easy to use. You can search for addresses, look for point of interest icons. Waze, hands down though, is my favorite map application to use. Big reason why is because as you're traveling, if people have noticed that there are cops pulling people over, if there's construction, things like that, people are really good at marking these things off to give you a heads up. And you can mark things off. So if you notice a speed trap, if you want to mark off hazards and things like that, you've got that flexibility. One downside is that CarPlay still doesn't have the option of using video playback right through the screen. So that's not available. You can use VLC for audio if you want to. Hoopla is a library app. You can listen to podcasts and so many other options inside of this screen as well. And you can also customize. So under your settings here, you can go to wallpaper. If you wanted to customize the wallpaper layout, you can change the appearance to dark, whatever the case may be. If you were back home, you could then jump back into CarPlay along the bottom left-hand side. And if you were to do a push and hold on the voice command prompt on the steering wheel, that's going to launch into your Siri assistant. So a light button push is going to be the factory assistant. But if you do a longer push and hold, that's going to be your built-in car assistant instead. Then you've got the flexibility to be able to adjust these icons out. On your phone, you're going to go into your settings, general, and then CarPlay. You're going to find your vehicle. You can forget it, customize, or toggle CarPlay off. We want to customize, and you're just going to grab the hamburger icon in order to drag out the apps that you'd like to the desired position. Anything with a minus next to it, you can remove it from the screen. So we look there, we've removed them, but it saves it along the bottom of the phone. So if you want to, you can add them back in. But if you've organized your layout for the icons and you're not a fan of what you've done, along the top right side of the phone, you can see that there's a reset option. You're going to reset. And that'll just bring you back to the factory default screen there instead. So it's relatively straightforward using this. You can hop back to the home screen. If you go into connections, we're connected over CarPlay. You can simply disconnect that way. So it's going to stop Apple CarPlay and reconnect us over Bluetooth instead. So if you didn't want to go through CarPlay, you just wanted to make phone calls, listen to audio, you'd have the flexibility to be able to do it. You can hit info icon there in order to be able to look at your device information or hop back into smartphone projection again. That's how you set up Apple devices inside the Frontier. Setting up Android devices is the exact same process. So if you were on this screen, you'd go into connections again, and you're just going to go add new. And then on your phone, we're just waiting for that vehicle to show up again. So we're just waiting for my Frontier. There we go. My Frontier has shown up. So we're just going to click, and we're giving it a second to connect. PIN numbers match up, so you're going to hit OK there. And Android Auto. But before we get to that, so it's asking, do I want to allow access to my messages and my contacts? And this is not my vehicle, so I'm saying no to that one. And you've also got wireless Android Auto available as an option here too. So if yours doesn't have wireless, you can hook up over USB instead. Again, making sure that you've got one with the data transfer icon. And Android Auto should be launching in a second. And look at that, 3, 2, 1. We are fully connected to Android Auto. Launches into the split screen, very similar setup to Apple CarPlay. So you've got your current time, battery, connection levels, your map, and a few other options. You can hit there in order to be able to get to your assistant if you want to. You can do a long button push and hold in order to get to your assistant that way as well. So you've got that available. You can hit the little icon view here in order to get to this little split screen back here. You can hit the Google Maps icon there, and that's going to bring you into this full screen and its pinch to zoom capabilities. So it's not pinch to zoom on Apple CarPlay, but it is on Android Auto. You can search for addresses, you can look at different satellite views, edit route options. So if you wanted to avoid highways, toll roads, ferries, things like that, you'd have that flexibility. And then you can hop into the icon view as well. And I do have Waze installed on this phone. But if you've got Waze installed on your Android and it's not working or showing up properly, check down in the description of this video for a little walkthrough on how you can add that one in. But, I mean, it's straightforward here. You've got Waze, you've got so many things. Hopping back home, into your connections, you've got both phones, so you'd be able to disconnect there as well. Back on the home screen, you can hop back into Android Auto that way. And then on your phone, you'd also have the flexibility of being able to customize these icons. So on your phone, all you're going to do is search for Android Auto, go into your Android Auto settings, and there are a bunch of options, but we're looking for Customize Launcher. And then all you're gonna do is just grab the little hamburger icon and drag things around to the order that you'd like them in. Anything with a check mark next to it, you can get rid of, or you can add things back in, but it's not dynamic the same way it was on the iPhone side, so it's not gonna just update. You have to hop back home, go to your connections, you're going to disconnect from, there we go, Android Auto, reconnect to Android Auto, and it'll take a second there, launching us back in, and the changes that we made have now come into effect. So it's that simple doing it. If you were to hop back home again, go back into your connections, you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you can do a mix and match. So let's say if you wanted to be connected to the one phone for phone calls, and then another phone for media, you can do that. So you can either be hooked up to Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, not both, but you could do a mix and match here. So if you wanted to be hooked up to the one phone for phone calls and for audio, you could do that, or you can do a mix and match this way instead. And then if you were to hit the little info icon, you could then delete phones if you wanted to, delete and yes. So the iPhone's been deleted, and it's the same thing on the Android side of things. Just a second, info, delete and yes. And both phones have now been deleted. And it's that easy setting up Android and iPhone devices inside of the Frontier. And back home from there. You've got a little bit of information available here too, so specifically SiriusXM, but then there's some other info like system, where you can do software updates, map updates, and things like that. So you could update by USB device if you're connected to a Wi-Fi network at home, etc. You can see your current version and software number. And then you've got your GPS information. So if you're off-roading and you get stuck, you need to call it tow, you can give them your exact latitude and longitude as well. There's a series of different audio settings. You've got AM, FM, SiriusXM, USB audio is available here too. So if you had a USB stick with MP3s, you could listen to audio that way. And as you hop into your audio, you've now got a bunch of different audio sources down along the bottom. So those are dynamic. Hopping back into audio, you can change out the sources here. So if you wanted to listen to AM, FM, or SiriusXM, you could. All of your presets along the bottom are a mix, but you can see there, you've got a series of open pages, but you can also overwrite. So what you're going to do is tune to whatever station you want to. You're just going to then push and hold, and that's going to overwrite the stations. You can look at your FM menu there. You can do a general scan, look at radio text if it was available, manage your presets. So if you wanted to delete certain presets out, you'd have the flexibility to do it. So if there are presets that you just don't want to listen to, you can get rid of them that way. And then if you wanted to, you could hop in any of the available stations this way. You can also do a voice command prompt. Tune to 97.7 FM. And you can see there, it's tuning out. So you can use your voice in order to change stations, and then just button press in order to be able to overwrite. Back into FM menu, just get your basics there. When you're in SiriusXM, that gives you a few more options as well. So you've got your related options. So if you're listening to a song and you're a fan of the actual artist, you can see what's related. You've got a SiriusXM menu as well. You can block explicit content. There are notifications too, where you can manage your notifications. There's listener history on top of that. You can hit the notify icon here in order to be notified of the artist or the song. So if you're a big fan of Jaquan and Tipsy, or just Jaquan in general, you could do notify and then on. And then if Jaquan plays on any station, you'll get a notification letting you know that that artist is now playing. It's pretty straightforward. Hopping back into source, you've got USB. If you were connected to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, etc., you could then select those as additional sources. But that's using audio inside of the ride. You've got maps as well, and maps, factory navigation built in, which is very useful. You saw earlier, you do have the flexibility of connecting over Android or iPhone if you wanted to go that route instead. You can drag across this way, hitting back to circle in on yourself. You can search for point of interest icons as well, so you can search by latitude first, longitude second. You can start typing in for point of interest icons, so if you wanted to, you could search that way. So we've gone to a local Tim Hortons. You can start, you can add to a route, look at more routes, and then there are additional options where you can save the location or save the route. Just going to hit start there.
Follow the road for 100 meters.
You can hit this to call Nissan services, hit this icon to save it, look at point of interest icons, look at some additional map settings. So if you wanted to do split views, left side information, you can look at map icons. So did you want to show all of these different point of interest icons, yay or nay? Some other options, you can change out your map orientation, map color, the text size. So if you wanted it small or large for the text size, you can do that. And then your tracking dots, yay or nay. The tracking dots are actually kind of neat. And the reason why is because if you're going off-road, anywhere that you've traveled, think Hansel and Gretel. So there will be little breadcrumbs along the places that you've gone to. And big benefit there is that if you get lost, you can then backtrack where you've currently gone to. It's actually pretty useful. You can then do a cancel route if you want to. If you were back home, hopping into your map again with your app going, and then you can hit map full screen if you'd like to. You can change up your headings this way instead. And then you can also zoom in or out this way. You can do a pinch to zoom instead if you'd like to. You can fine tune it that way. Hit back, and you've got your current destination along the very bottom there. If you hop back into that split map, you then get a few options. You can cancel the route, look at your route, look at the end destination as well. I'm going to just cancel and cancel. Then you could search for other addresses again, so whether that's point of interest icons, GPS coordinates, and things like that. You can hop back into your home menu again from there. Connections is going to bring you into your connection tab. You've got your Wi-Fi with a vehicle hotspot available. You do need a data-only plan in order for this to work, but you could use the vehicle as a hotspot if you wanted to, and then USB info if you had a USB stick connected. I think that's the basics there. So we're going to dive into some additional settings. So you can jump into your connections that way. It's the same idea. Navigation is going to give you some different navigation settings. So you can adjust things on your map, which we've already seen. Dual map is essentially going to give you a little split map instead. I'm a bigger fan of, like, even the 3D look is kind of neat, but you can change out the map if you'd like to that way. So it's a matter of preference. Do you want to be in the 2D versus 3D map view? There's some different guidance settings for your volume. So as you come up to turns, do you want to get notifications, yay or nay? Do you want the car to tell you when you've got an upcoming turn? Do you want to get a traffic announcement? So for red light cameras, things like that. And then if there's an upcoming toll booth. Route type, do you want the fastest, the most eco-friendly, or the shortest distance? Other routing options, so did you want to minimize toll roads, things like that? So if you wanted to avoid toll roads, HOV lanes, things like that, you've got that flexibility. With your estimated time, do you want it to be for your end destination or a waypoint in between? You can customize the route if you'd like to. So do you want to get the fastest route only, or do you want to get all three options instead? See, traffic info, nothing exciting there. Safety information, if you want to get speed limit warnings and things like that in your cluster screen or on your map, you could. I'm not a fan of that personally. There's an address book. So you can delete all of your saved items. So if you've saved previous addresses to the vehicle, you can delete them. Same thing, you can delete all of your previous destinations and reset everything back to the default instead. There are a series of sound settings where you can adjust your bass, treble, and a few other things. Something like this is definitely not the way to go. So your treble, if everything is kind of centered out, your bass up a few points with your treble down a few is going to give you pretty good audio. And then you can adjust the balance. So do you want it to be left or right focused, rear or front focused there instead? So if you wanted it focused on people in the first row, you've got the flexibility to do it. Into volumes and beeps. So there's no beeping right now, but if you wanted to, you can add in a little button beep. There's guidance voice, let's see, your ringtone, your audio volumes and things like that. What do you want it set to? If you adjust it that way, it'll automatically adjust that out as well. You can customize your menu. So you can customize the home menu. What do you want showing up there, which we've already seen, but you can also customize your audio sources. So all of the buttons along the bottom here. So if you wanted to have preference for AM over this way or FM over that way. If you listen to your USB type A instead of type C, you could kind of adjust these out and you can customize the layout however you'd like to there. And then there's also your split screen. So when you've got your split screen, what do you want showing up inside of that split screen? And there are so many different options that are available. So that one's going to be a matter of preference. From here, there's some Nissan Connect services. There's a system voice, and that's the voice command prompt that you hit there. So you've got your voice command prompt. Whether or not certain things show up or not is going to be a matter of preference. That initial prompt, so when you first get to go to hit the voice command prompt, you want that initial notification. And then yes, we want shorter prompts because, watch this, tune to 97.7 FM. It just launches into the assistant and it just does it. So that's one thing that I absolutely recommend that you turn on, is that under your system voice, turn off the initial prompt, turn on the voice prompt. You could then select whether it's a male or female voice and how fast or slow that voice speaks back to you. There are some other settings, so your display as well. If you wanted to, you could toggle the display off. You're just going to push the button down there in order to resume. You can adjust the brightness, the contrast levels, the black levels. You can change out the language. So do you want to be in either English, French, or Spanish? You can also change out your measurement units. So do you want your measurement units to be in kilometers or miles? And that's not going to change out much because you've got traditional gauges right inside of the cluster screen there as well. But you can adjust out your unit gauges specifically for navigation. And then also, do you want to be in Celsius or Fahrenheit, which is going to change up the units on your climate. You can return everything back to a factory default screen instead. There are some system updates available where you can update your maps and things like that. And then just basic apps. So there's a lot of basic information there. And then down the screen, there are a few other options. You've got your four-way blinkers, volume rocker. You could push in order to mute your audio as well. So button push to turn it back on, off, etc. You could hot button press to get into your audio sources this way instead. Home button press to get back to the home screen and then jump between your different pages. You can button press to get to your map. You can change between songs or stations this way. You can pull up your camera as well. One thing that I would like to see, it's definitely an upgraded camera. The quality of that camera is not really the greatest, but you've got your little 360 view with a side camera mounted view. You can push this in order to change between either a day or a night mode. And when you do that, you can also adjust the brightness along the very top if you wanted to. You could also do a longer button push and hold there, and that's going to bring you into this screen instead. And that's going to turn the screen off, button push, in order to bring it back on again. And then there's a basic back button there. You can also scroll to different stations this way instead if you want to. So straightforward. If the screen has ever given you problems, like things aren't working properly, it's not connecting to Android Auto, Apple CarPlay, your maps aren't working, audio's not working, you can also easily do a reboot on the screen. All you're going to do, a long button push and hold on that power button. So you're going to hold in for about 10 seconds or so. There we go. And you can see there, the screen is turned off, and in a few seconds, it's just going to cycle back through again. So if your phone's not connecting properly, if Android Auto, Apple CarPlay aren't working, you could do a full factory reset if you wanted to, but honestly, your best bet is just to do a soft reboot by pushing and holding that button for about 10 seconds or so. That should clear out any problems that you are having. You've got your basic climate control settings there. Heated first row seats, 2 different settings, a heated steering wheel. The beeping that you get as you back up, you can toggle that one off if you want to. There are 2 USB power points, so a USB Type-C and a regular USB that are both data transfer, which is useful. There's a little storage down there, a hand shifter, which is useful. You've got park, reverse, neutral, drive, and then when you're in drive, you can move over in order to get to a manual mode instead. So if you wanted to be able to shift gears out yourself, you'd have the flexibility to do it. There are some cup holders there, along with a wireless charge pad. Decent amount of storage space here. This is non-lockable, but the glove box is fully lockable, and there's a good amount of space there. You're going to find a 12-volt power point here as well, and just good styling overall. Like, you've got that same pocket along the side that follows through both sides here as well. I like the style. There's a good amount of space here too. So I'm 6 feet tall, and hold on, let me lower the seat. Okay, yeah, so it's as far down as it's going to go. And with the seat as far down, overhead, I've got 3 inches of headspace, which, I mean, if you're 6'3", 6'4", maybe a bit taller, you'll be able to fit inside of the truck, but there's a solid amount of space inside of this ride. You've got your assist handle along both the passenger side and the rear side there as well. Overhead, there's typically going to be a manual dimming rear view mirror. This one's got the optional auto dimming, and there's also a garage door opener there. So if you've got one at home, you can easily program it in if you wanted to. There's a sunglasses holder up overhead, basic controls for your cabin lights, and then there's also the option for a little sunroof. So it's not a full panoramic, but you've got that flexibility with it closed. You can push away to open it up. Single button press is most of the way. Secondary press is that last little bit. But that just opens things up so nicely. When it's fully closed like that, you can also push away if you wanted to create a little breeze there. There's an SOS or tow mode available there as well, just in case. From there, you've got your visor, no ticket receipt holder on the outside or the inside. There is a little light though in that vanity mirror. And then this, oh yeah, it stretches out to block most of the sun. You might get a little bit hitting your face, but I wouldn't really say that's anything to be concerned about. Overall visibility inside of the truck, I think is solid. You might run into some issues there with the pillar, but I don't think it's anything that you're really gonna have to be concerned about. There are a few different audio systems you're gonna find inside of the Frontier. This one is the upgraded 10-speaker Fender audio system. So you've got the option of easily moving through different sources. Let's go through USB. And the audio that we're gonna listen to here, it's just coming out of the microphone. So there's no post-processing done on that whatsoever. So I'm just gonna look for different songs, and let's start off here. I mean, that's pretty solid audio. Let's go through another song and... They want me to do something that could make sense. They hate when I keep dreaming I'll be famous. The audio inside of the ride. I got all this potential that's deep inside of me, but it is pumping in this car. Well, truck, I should say. The audio inside of this thing is amazing. And that's just the Fender speakers there. The audio setup is pretty solid. I haven't been in a 6-speaker, so there's no real basis for comparison for me. But the 10-speaker, if you're an audiophile, I think you're going to absolutely love it. It's good. I like it. The visibility here as well, like it's solid all around. There's a little storage tray above the dash there too. And hold on, yeah, let's get the seat set up the way that I would traditionally drive. Here we go. And let's hop back into that second row. So this is, like I said, the crew cab configuration. There is the option for the king cab. The doors would swing the opposite way instead. But you've got your basic window control, some storage high and low. Ooh. In the second row here, with the driver's seat set up for myself being 6 feet tall, I've got a decent amount of foot space and knee space. Headspace with me sitting fully upright is tight. Not even like maybe half an inch of headspace there. So not much. I can at least sit back here, which is all right, but I would not want to go on distance trips in the second row because there's no way you can slide the seats forward or backwards. I'm also a bigger guy, but yeah, they're not the most comfortable seats. Middle seat, there's no hump. Little hump in the middle. Ooh, so tight, little tight. I can fit in the middle seat though. Not bad. Same thing, I wouldn't want to sit in the middle seat. Well, I wouldn't want to sit in the second row. It's a little tight overall. I mean, look, my knee is like against the one side there. But the middle seat is actually surprisingly comfortable. And that's usually the forgotten seat in most trucks, but this is actually really nice. The cushion's good. Feature-wise back here, you're gonna find some power points down there, and those are strictly for charging. So a USB-C, USB Type A, and then a regular 400 watt wall plug back there too. There's a little map pocket behind the passenger side. There's a little handle along the driver's or the passenger side, and then a handle and a hook along the driver's side there. You're gonna find cup holders built into the seat there as well. Definitely need something like a little strap in order to make it easier to pull down if you need it. The anchor points are down there if you have child seats. Top tethers are behind the seats. I'll show you that one in a second. There is also a manual sliding rear window. Useful. and then a little light. Really useful, nice. But feature-wise back here, that's really about it. There's not too much to the second row, but I mean here, carpeted mats. I said I'd just go for the thermoplastic rubber trays. It would just make it so much easier to clean down in the wintertime. Now there's a little tab along the top here you can pull in order to show off that top tether point if you need it. And then there's also a little tab here that you can lift up. And when you do, it's a release in order to be able to get under the seat. So hold on, this is gonna be a little tricky. Wow. There we go. So underneath, you can see there, because this is the upgraded audio system, you've got your little woofer back there. Straightforward. And then, if we were to go to the other side, along the top, pulling that tab, you're going to find a top tether point, so a few there as well. And then there's also the jack stand. So if you wanted to change the tire out yourself, you've got that flexibility. You do have access to Nissan roadside assistance if you needed a hand, but the spare tire's underneath the truck, and then the jack stand is there if you need it. And then there's a little tab along this side too, and then lifting that one up, there we go, is going to show you a little storage area. So not a ton of storage there, but it is available as an option if you want it. Filling up fuel inside of the Frontier is done just along the driver's side here. It's an unlocked cover, and it does have a capped system. If you're worried about fuel theft, you could always go aftermarket and just get a cover that has a key on it instead. So that's available as an option. And one nice thing is that the minimum manufacturer's recommendation for fuel inside of the truck is just regular gas. So 87 octane is all you need to use. You're not really going to get many performance benefits by going for a higher octane fuel. There is the argument though, if you're putting the truck under heavy load, and this is with any vehicle, so heavy towing, off-roading, whatever the case may be, you might want to use a 91 octane. It's just not necessary. Minimum manufacturer's recommendation is just an 87. Rear-world fuel economy inside of the Frontier is going to depend on your own personal driving habits, and if you're driving on the highway or if you're just on residential streets. And when I went to go pick the truck up, I drove about 60-ish, 60 and change kilometers in order to pick it up. And on the way back from picking it up, I was averaging, so I was able to get it down to about 10.6 liters per 100, which is pretty respectable for a truck just coasting on the highway. But the second you put your foot down in order to start speeding up faster, if you're in stop and go traffic on residential streets and things like that, you are going to be using more fuel in comparison. But I was able to get decent fuel economy inside of this ride, considering that this is a non-turbocharged 3.8 liter engine. But you're not necessarily getting a truck, hoping for the best fuel economy. This is not going to happen. This is just a good balance, I think, overall. Regardless of the trim level of the Frontier that you're in, you're going to find LED tail lamps, and those lamps have a nice black bezel that are wrapped throughout. And the matte black highlight that was in the front grille also follows through to the back. You've got that Nissan badge with that orange paint that looks so good. And then the Pro 4X badge along the right side. Technology-wise back here, there's also the reverse park sensing system along with the backup camera. And then towing inside the Frontier is obviously possible. You've got your 4 and the 7-pin wiring provisions. And then there's also the receiver. The spare tire is located just underneath the truck as well. Towing capacity inside of the Frontier is going to depend on which version of the vehicle that you're in. Are you 4x2 or 4x4? Have you gone for the 5 or the 6-foot bed? Which cabin configuration do you have? So at a minimum, you're just over 6,300 pound towing capacity with your maximum at 6,850 pounds, which is pretty solid. So if you're towing things like boats, trailers, whatever the case may be, you're pretty good for the most part. But if you start nickel and diming your payload capacity and your towing capacity, that's when you're going to have to look at other options instead, because you ideally don't want to tow more than about 80% of your maximum towing capacity. So this might max out at 6,800 pounds, but realistically, you're probably going to want to tow max somewhere in the 5,500 to 5,800 ballpark. So that's something to take into consideration. The tailgate inside of the truck is fully lockable, which is useful. And dropping down, fairly slow drop, which is cool. Payload capacity inside of the Frontier, again, is going to depend on your configuration option. At a minimum, you're at least 1,100 pounds, up to a maximum of around 1,350 pounds. But that's going to depend on your configuration and which options that you've added on, because everything in the truck world has a net weight. The tonneau cover has a net weight. If you add in aftermarket accessories, bed extenders, things like that, that's all going to subtract from your max allowable payload. And that's the same thing if you're towing a trailer as well. So if you're towing a 5,000 pound trailer with a 500 pound tongue weight, that's going to negatively impact your payload capacity by 500 pounds. So those are all numbers that you have to take into account when you're speccing out how you build this truck out. So one thing to consider there. This one, as I mentioned, does have the available tonneau cover. And in order to roll it up, there's a release you're going to pull, and you're going to go. Once you fold it twice, then the next step is to go underneath, and there's a release lever you're going to pull and go up one more time in order to fully raise it up from there. And then you've also got the flexibility of using the little rails here, so a little stopper, in order to be able to keep this thing up completely. So you'd be able to lock it down into place. Beneficial if you need to have the tonneau cover up because you've got other stuff in the bed of the truck. There are two different bed options that are available. So it's either going to be a 5 or a 6 foot bed from the factory, which is pretty useful. So if you need that longer wheelbase for some bigger things, that's available as an option. One thing that I like about the Frontier is that there is a spray-in bed liner right from the factory. Bed feature-wise though, not gonna find a ton. There's just a little light off to the left-hand side. Off to the right side, there's gonna be a little wall outlet with 400 watt maximum. There is the flexibility of turning on the bed lighting as well. So inside, all you're gonna do, turn on that cargo lamp, and that'll turn the bed lighting on. There is the option for a step as well right from the factory, but I mean really, if you have to get inside, it's not overly difficult to do. Do some en route highway handling here. I mean, it's got some power. It does have some power, and one of the benefits of it not being a turbocharged engine, you don't have to wait for the turbocharger to kick in. It's a naturally aspirated engine, so you put your foot down and you're driving. You are going to find the Frontier either rear-wheel drive, so 4x2 or 4x4 instead. In the 4x4 models, there's a selector switch to move between either 2 high, 4 high, or 4 low. And the overall handling that you get inside of the truck, so this is rear-wheel drive right now, which realistically, you're going to be in rear-wheel drive the majority of the time. It's just what makes sense when you're driving. If you're in slippery, snowy conditions, you're going to want to jump yourself into the 4-wheel drive version instead. And then if you're going off-road, if you're planning on going on trails, things like that, pulling a boat, heavy towing, that's where 4 low is going to come into play instead. And then looking at the turning radius here, ooh, I'm going to have to do a 3-point turn for sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. Ooh, 3-point turn it. And here we go. Makes sense, it's a truck, so the turning radius is not going to be the greatest inside of a truck, but no real complaints there. And that is the Nissan Frontier. What'd you think? It's my first time actually being in a Nissan Frontier ever, and I was actually pleasantly surprised with the truck. But you can find all of the build details for this specific Frontier down in the description, along with links off to Nissan Canada, US, and then all of the tech walkthroughs down there too. But if you found this useful, give it a thumbs up, share it with someone if you think they might find it helpful. And until I see you next time, take care. Inside of the Frontier, there's only a single, One nice thing is that the minimum manufacturer's recommendation inside of the truck is just regular 87, hey, I'll tell you about it.